welcome to Make Better Things with Nirvana CPH and me, Jack CG. In today's episode, we're going to be diving into all things fashion related, well, specifically sustainable fashion, with the one and only Jaime Perlman. Having started her career over in the US, Jamie's journey brought her here to our sunny shores of London, where she not only transformed the pages of British Vogue as former creative director, but now has created her own legacy with Jaime Perlman Studio and More or Less magazine, which both contribute to the conversation surrounding sustainable fashion. So we're really excited to be talking with her today. I hope you guys enjoy. So I'm very lucky to be joined by the amazing Jaime Perlman today. Hi, Jaime.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. Just waking up.
Lovely. Yeah, it's we're transatlantic, as they say today. Speaking from New
Exactly.
York to London, so bringing
Bright and early here.
sustainability, right? Yeah. What time is it
Yeah,
over
yeah.
there?
I mean, it's 9:15, which isn't that early, but for some reason it feels early right now on a Friday.
On a Friday, exactly, and the perfect time to
Yeah,
do an interview, of course.
totally. No, it's good.
So, your impact on the fashion industry has been really impressive. I'm sure many of us Brits that have been flicking through the pages of Vogue over the years have felt that influence. What was it
Oh,
like?
thank you.
My pleasure. What was it like transitioning from working for such a huge publication like that to your own endeavors that clearly have a lot more of a sustainable focus? Obviously, Vogue is just a huge general fashion brand, whereas you've got Jaime Perlman Studios and More or Less magazine, which really focus in on that sustainable conversation. Was there a turning point for Jaime that kind of took you down that path?
Yeah, I mean, it's been such a journey. I really kind of grew up at Vogue. One of my first jobs, after college, I was an assistant at Harper's Bazaar for Fabian Baron, and then a year and a half later went to American Vogue and sort of worked my way up there, then came to British Vogue, and really spent my entire career in glossy magazines and mostly Vogue, to be honest. So it was sort of like everything I knew about fashion. But then, I was always somebody that felt, even though a huge connection and appreciation and enjoy, I felt such an enjoyment for all the creativity involved in the magazine. There was also part of me that was quite observant and, aware of things that maybe weren't really resonating with me in the fashion industry, and like almost like an inner voice that got a bit louder and louder towards, the end of my career at British Vogue. And I didn't feel, I mean, to be honest, sustainability wasn't really at the forefront of my mind. I was super interested in individuality in fashion. I felt like the fashion industry had gotten a bit too excessive and almost quick paced. Everything was moving so quickly, all the seasons. It just felt everything became hugely excessive and expensive and over the top, which was great in so many ways. But there's something in me that felt that there was room for expression of fashion and through a different lens that was more personal and you know about individual style, vintage clothes that you wouldn't just buy in a department store, or fashion that wasn't straight off the catwalk. And I started brainstorming about ideas for a magazine that really was all about that, and just a different approach to fashion and styling and image making. And the more I began to put together the initial ideas for More or Less magazine, I started this unintentional education about sustainability in fashion, and I became really aware how important this conversation was going to come in the coming years. And this all started in like 2017, at the end of 2017, when I left Vogue and started thinking about More or Less. And initially I was going to call the magazine Less, because I wanted it was almost a reaction to everything being so extra and so excessive. So the initial prototype of the magazine was Less, and I had some friends, some big photographers who wanted to be involved in the magazine, but said the name sounded too negative to them, and I should go back to work and think about it. So we came up with More or Less, and I'm much happier actually with the name, and that's where we landed. So
Yeah, amazing.
I don't know if
And
I answered your question.
yeah, absolutely. I think it's really interesting as well to speak about how your movement from thought about fashion as an expression of more individualism and the access to that being perhaps vintage clothes or bespoke pieces or things that aren't mass produced. Do you think there's a big space between what we might consider to be sustainable dressing or sustainable fashion and the fast-paced movement of fast fashion? Are there any, like, is there a way that they could link together? Is there anyone doing that out there at the moment? It doesn't seem to be from where I'm sitting.
Yeah, I think the concept of, I think the idea of fashion being accessible to all people in a price point sort of way is a really cool idea. And I think that's sort of, you know, we are where we are today because, you know, of these fast fashion brands that sort of were born, you know, it came out of that idea. But it's yeah, I mean, where it is, it's very disconnected from sustainability. And I think it's, you know, I know that there's a lot of huge fast fashion brands that are making eco collections and looking at more innovative materials, and they have quite stringent, you know, carbon footprint plans and models in their businesses, which is great. But you know, at the end of the day, we you know, both fast fashion and the luxury sector, every fashion company, if we keep producing the amount of clothes that we're making at the speed and pace that we're making, we're not helping ourselves, we're not helping the planet. It's destructive. So I mean, that, and to me, is the biggest problem, is that we consume too much at too fast of a pace. And you know, it's great to be doing things better, and I commend, you know, everyone has to produce things better. And you know, I think there is a world where we can produce new things, but just, I don't know, the amount and pace is too much.
Almost like
I don't
oh, sorry, carry on.
no, I know, I was just going to say, like, at the moment, from your original question, I think there's a huge disconnect between like sustainable dressing and the way fashion is right now. And there's a lot of work to be done in that respect.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. It definitely feels like um, exactly what you were saying as well. The dichotomy of quality and quantity people don't seem to be trying to marry them together and see if they can work. It's really one or the other. It makes me think a lot about we see a lot of brands using those similar techniques. So maybe an eco capsule collection, or maybe slashing their carbon emissions and making different promises in their manifestos to show that they might be considered sustainable. But really, are these the kind of practices that we think are making a brand sustainable, or dare I use the word greenwashing? Are there things that brands could be doing that are far more effective, or I guess communicate more communicate sustainability in a more efficient way?
I mean, I think greenwashing is so rampant, and you know, everybody, it's like it's a double-edged sword, because I think, you know, doing an eco capsule collection allows these big brands, you know, it's obvious that brands can't change overnight. Brands that are huge companies and have huge, you know, people that work for them, and you know, quotas of sales they need to meet. It's not, change isn't going to happen overnight. but I do think that it's interesting to do an a capsule collection as an experiment, as a brands to dip their toes in the water to see how they can innovate their materials more. And sure, it starts small and it gets bigger, but at the same time, it's also a marketing ploy for them to tick a box, and then without like a solid long-term plan about how. I think every brand, what they need is an authentic long-term plan of how they're going to change their business, um, and how they're going to do that authentically. And I think the majority of brands out there that are speaking about sustainability might be doing a little bit of greenwashing, or at least speaking about it more than in a bigger way than the effect it's actually having. I mean, you look at someone like, a brand like Patagonia and how inspiring and authentic that statement was. And, the way that they've conducted their business. I mean, that's incredible. I guess maybe they're the only brand that's like a massive brand that has so much integrity and really puts their money where their mouth is, but it's so dramatic what they've done. And obviously not every brand can do that. But yeah, so I think there's definitely greenwashing is rampant, but I don't want to sort of knock the idea of, it also, then people are scared to greenwash. They're scared to kind of like, be seen to be dabbling in sustainability, because then they're worried people are going to call them out for something. So it's really like the way people communicate about their plans is a very sensitive subject and needs to be done well and in a thought out way.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's very true about, oh gosh, sorry, my brain just paused for a second. It's very
Mine did that earlier too.
I completely agree about greenwashing as well. Working in it can almost feel a bit like a brand might be virtue signaling in some way. If they're to push forward some sort of sustainable concept or manifesto or a decision that they're making, quite often in the world of marketing. I mean, I work in marketing, so I see a lot of communication, and quite often it's received. It can be received, not poorly, but with hesitation or with a bit of doubt as to their real intentions, which is a real shame. And then on the flip side, you've got brands like Patagonia making these huge, like you say, dramatic statements and decisions that, because of this great rift between the two options, almost, Patagonia feels quite radical in a sense, which I find really, really kind of funny. I found it kind of funny that that's seen as insane, really. But hopefully it should be really inspiring to some other brands that could do something similar. I guess it's all about knowing your reach and knowing what your brand's capable of achieving within its identity as well. I think Patagonia's decision speaks really well to Patagonia and who they are and who they've always been and what they've always done. Anyway, enough advertising for them. Gosh.
I know. No, it's tricky. I mean, it shows like where the core, where their brand DNA lies. It always stemmed from this place. And I think a lot of other brands are like, we make shoes, we make sneakers or whatever, and we're killing the planet. How can we do this? People are just kind of scrambling to catch up a little bit. Fair enough. It's everyone's in the same boat. It's tough, and ultimately fashion is business. People are in it to make money, and they want to, obviously make beautiful things and make people happy and not kill the planet. But there's a trade-off. If you want to do things better, you have to trade off something with your business. So they're tough decisions to make. So I empathize.
Yeah, it's not an easy one, especially in an industry as global and gripping as fashion. Like it has a real hold on the zeitgeist, and always does. Every generation and every era, fashion is so up there with something that shapes our culture. To rock the boat with such huge decisions that could crumble companies or could really change the way they work. It is, I guess it must be daunting for many of them to make those sorts of decisions. I think a lot about it makes me think a lot about how we put a lot of focus on product and the garments and the materials we're using. But do you think there might be more potential for change in not only the practices and processes of the brand, but perhaps in the people as well, and the people's practices and processes, maybe how they run the company, how they run their teams? There's got to be
Absolutely.
room. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think so. I think what's really interesting to me, and I've learned through more or less, is that the younger generation of consumers put sustainability at the top of their list as one of the priorities and when they shop for clothes. And the audience for more or less is pretty millennial, or not even what am I talking about, millennial? That's so old. I'm talking about like Gen Z, or I don't know, I can't keep track. I'm so far away from all these young generations of people, but it's a very young audience that picks up the magazine, and from what I know, that they really care about sustainability and are inspired by it. What I'm really interested personally in, and I think something more or less as a brand in itself will be making, be more invested in, and we've always been invested in, but I'm really interested in new brands and new companies that are starting from the beginning with a view to be more eco and environmentally friendly from the outset, and how they are incorporating that ethos from the very beginning of the creation of their brand, to the way that they make clothes, the way they hire their teams, being inclusive and just looking at everything in a different way than was done before. I think that to me is really interesting. And I think that there's, more or less has a genuine vested interest in companies like that. And we plan to sort of help support these brands, not only through our platform, but in bigger ways, hopefully in the future.
Well, one brand that kind of comes to mind for me is Alawalia, with Priya Alawalia, who it's one of those brands that sustainability was at its core from conception, which I think has a real impact on every decision you make. If it's in your branding, and you really stick true to that through every decision process and every department, I think it really reflects. We're lucky to have worked with Alawalia recently on their packaging suite, and for that as well.
It's beautiful. It looks stunning.
Thank you. It's we're very chuffed with it on our end as well. I think it looks really beautiful. So huge congrats to the team that works on that.
Yeah, well done, guys.
Teams at Alawalia. But they're a great example of a company that I think as well, it is down to, I guess, if you're a new brand, which, like you said, the ones that we want to, and the kind of really fascinating and interesting, exciting ones. If you're new and you're building yourself and your brand and your company in 2022, or maybe even as far back as 2016, 2015, sustainability is such an expectation of to be thought about, at least, that I wouldn't be surprised if it was built into the process. So maybe we'll see a few more brands in the next decade or so really take a hold that have sustainability at their core, and throughout all of their practices, which would be really, really exciting.
Yeah, super exciting. And Priya is like, her kind of talent and ambition and intellect, I've met her early on in her career, we supported her through more or less, and we worked on one of her books that she's put out and our studio. And I really think she's a great sort of spokesperson of that generation of new designer that really looks at fashion as, something that can be developed more sustainably. And also, I think what's interesting about Priya and all of these new brands and just fashion in general is that, like, fashion and brands, it's become, in a sense, the whole world of fashion has become a real cultural platform for, like, big discussions. It's almost the world of fashion. I mean, you can kind of tout it for being frivolous and whatever, but it's really, these designers are, spokespeople for, really big issues, the climate, inclusivity, like, all kinds of amazing things are coming out of fashion. And I think these young designers like Priya and, others like her are really leading these discussions, which are really important.
Yeah, definitely. I think it is really cool to see it more, and more of a global conversation, definitely. And especially as one that, I mean, there's still many people in the world that their eyes haven't been opened to the kind of sorry state that our planet's in, I guess. And maybe their heads are turned by things like fashion shows or collections. I think of I was lucky enough to see some things at London Fashion Week recently, and it immediately jumps to mind that there were far more designers putting out collections and making a note of their sustainable efforts and using dead stocks or creating a storyline to do with sustainability through their looks. And I think that's really great, because they're huge, big profile events that do spark conversation. I guess that's what they're for. That's the type of art that they are. Is if fashion provokes conversation amongst people. And so it's amazing that sustainability is kind of being driven at the front of the train at the moment, and is hopefully becoming a bit more of a substantial what's the phrase? Homestay? It's staying. Is where we're going. Hopefully it's sticking around.
Yes, totally. I hope so too.
And speaking of communication and conversation around sustainability, I guess that is exactly what More or Less magazine is all about. And you folks achieve amazing things through highlighting artists and designers and people doing all sorts of amazing things with fashion. One thing that immediately jumps to mind, which I'd love you to tell me a bit more about, is the work with Amber Valletta and the Fashion Institute.
Yes. That was fantastic. Amber has been a huge supporter of More or Less, and she's a huge inspiration to me that she's been so vocal about sustainability in fashion for a long time in her career. And I actually recently listened to a podcast she did for someone, and she talked about how she always felt, even when she was really young modeling, she felt a disconnect to the industry, and felt that at a certain point in her career she needed to vocalize that. And I related to that in some way, so I thought that was really interesting. But she's become, I guess she's been the New York ambassador for sustainability at the Fashion Institute of Technology. And we came to her with an idea to create a capsule collection. And we wanted to experiment with selling product via our website. And we thought this was a good way to launch it. And so Amber kindly donated pieces from her wardrobe that had been in storage. She worked with stylist Alex Harrington, who is a fashion editor for American Vogue, among other things. And they worked together and edited some pieces from her wardrobe that she was willing to part with. And then we also selected 5 alumni from the Fashion Institute that we thought were interesting. Each kind of hit a sort of different note design-wise, and we sent the pieces off to them, and they created these one-off pieces, which we then photograph for the magazine, and have also now the pieces themselves have been put on sale on morelessmag.com, and the profits will go back to the magazine. I'm sorry, the profits do not go to the magazine. It goes back to the alumni themselves to help support their businesses, and it also we're also making a donation with the rest to the Fashion Institute's sustainability fund for fashion.
Oh, awesome. That's so cool. I love that. And amazing how it's all part of this kind of circular economy of putting it back in to push more creativity in sustainable garment design. And that sounds really exciting. Is there
Thank you. Yeah, it was a really fun project. I think and the students were great. I think, we've already sold a few pieces. The collection just dropped Tuesday, so fingers crossed everything goes quickly.
Yeah, I need to get on there myself and snap one up.
Oh my God, that denim dress would be amazing on you.
Yeah, oh, perfect. That's funny. That's the only thing missing from my wardrobe this season is the denim dress. So we're coming to the end now. I wanted to do a little thing with you that we quite like to do here at Nirvana. It's just a bit of fun. So obviously we like to talk of making better things, adding that little bit of extra thought and care to make something really reach its full potential. And a fun little way we like to end our interviews is to ask our guests, if you could make one thing better, what would it be? Obviously, that's quite a grand and vast question. Your answer can be as silly or as sensible as you like.
Oh my God, that is such a hard question. If you could make something better, what would it be? And it can be anything, like clothes.
Absolutely anything. Mine is transport. I would make commuting and transport better, so I could sleep a little bit longer.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, totally. Ditto. I'll retweet that.
Yeah,
to be honest.
Who doesn't want that?
Who doesn't want that? Yeah, I know. God, make something better. This is so hard. How much time do I have?
You can send us a response in a week if you can work on it.
Yeah, totally. I mean, God, I don't know. The British government, can we make that better? That's all a bit of a mess right now.
Oh my word. Yeah, absolutely. I'm here for that. And I think a lot of people would also agree that needs making better.
Yeah, totally. But I'll think about that. Something that can be made better. Oh my God, it's so tough. I don't know.
No, we'll take the government. We'll take the government and transport together.
Let's take the government.
That's perfect.
Cool. I fully back you on that. Okay, great. Yeah, like here's to a better prime minister.
Exactly, and better trains and tubes, and maybe they'll come together. Who knows? Totally. So Jamie, just before we clock off, where can we find you? What are you getting up to these days? Is there anything we need our eyes and ears immediately open for? What's going on in your world right now?
Gosh, well, I think you can find me most of the time now in New York. I spend my time between New York and London, and I'm spending more and more time in New York City, which has been a lot of fun. It's a big change after 17 years of living in London full time. But yeah, I think Eyes and Ears, the new issue of More or Less is out. It came out September 26th, and it's still in the stands. And you've got it right there, which looks
got
really
one right
fab.
here. Yeah, I've got the hour cover, which is beautiful. All the 6 covers, by the way. If anyone hasn't seen them, get online and check them out.
Yeah, I'm really happy with the covers. I think you can buy it online, you can buy it at our website, you can walk into Dover Street Market and purchase a copy, and many other bookstores all across the world, Japan, Korea, New York, California, Canada, Europe. It's everywhere. So that's something. And we'll be working on our new issue for next year, as well as doing some interesting projects digitally. And we're going to be just looking at, our studio, more or less studio, we and Jaime Perlman studio, we continue working for and supporting brands who want to communicate in a more eco way, and whose brands whose ethos that we believe in. We would love to continue to support them and are working on some fun projects that will be coming out soon.
Amazing. I'm looking forward to looking forward to seeing them and having a good look.
Great.
Well, thank you so much, Jaime. It's been lovely having a chat with you this morning and diving into a bit about sustainable fashion. I hope you have a lovely weekend. Have a good rest of your on Friday.
Have a great weekend, and enjoy the rest of your day. Talk to you soon.
Thank you so much. Thank you for listening to our latest episode with Jaime Perlman. Please go and follow her on all of her socials and check out the work that she's doing at morelessmag.com, and get yourself a copy as well. And whilst you're there, why don't you give us a follow too and check out the work that we've been up to. Happy making better things, guys.